lovely poem entitled Daffodils, or I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, written by William Wordsworth. Now, William Wordsworth is a poet of nature. He wrote poems about the beauty of nature because he had fallen in love with nature. But after reading this particular poem, I'm sure you will also fall in love with literature. This poem is indeed very motivating, which motivates you to love nature as well as literature. Well, this poem is about 217-year-old poem. This poem was written in the year 1802. Now, just before this poem was composed, Dorothy, that is William Wordsworth's sister, and William Wordsworth himself were taking a walk beside a lake, when suddenly they came across a host of golden daffodils. The poem is based on the Lake District of England. Okay? Now we know that William Wordsworth was born in the year 1770 in Coppermouth, that is in the Lake District in England. Okay? He died in 1815. Now, this poem was published in the year 1802. Here. Besides this poem also, William Wordsworth had written poems like Tintern Abbey as well as The Solitary Reaper. Well, William Wordsworth is a romantic poet, we know that, and the majestic beauty of the district gave rise to his deep love of nature, which was reflected in his poetry. Now, in the year 1843, he became England's poet laureate. Okay? So, that was about William Wordsworth. Now, let me go through the poem line by line and explain to you all the verses of the poem. Now, as I explain to you the lines, I'll be giving you the word meanings as well as I'll be explaining to you about the figure of speech that Wordsworth had used in this poem. Now, first of all, let me read the poem, after which I'm going to explain the poem stanza-wise. I wandered lonely as a cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lakes, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. This was the first stanza of the poem. I've forgotten to tell you that this particular poem's title had been changed by some scholars to Daffodils. Okay, so this poem is also known as Daffodils. Okay, as well as I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Now, in this particular poem, the poet, that is William Wordsworth, and his sister Dorothy were taking a walk on the bank of the lake. As they were taking a walk on the bank of the lake, they were inspired by the lovely sight of the daffodils. Now, what do you understand by daffodils? Daffodils are actually bell-shaped yellow flowers. Okay, bell-shaped yellow flowers. Clear? Now, let me read the poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud. The word wandered here means to move about without any aim or without any purpose. Okay? So the poet in the first line of the poem compares himself to a cloud, okay, which is seen to be floating over high over valleys and hills, okay, valleys and hills. So I wander lonely as a cloud. Here a figure of speech called a simile has been used. But what is a simile? A simile here means a simile here is a figure of speech where comparison is made with two unlike things using the word like or as. Okay? When you find a comparison that is made using words like as or like, it is known as a simile. Now, first of all, let us understand what a figure of speech is. A figure of speech is a word or a phrase that possesses a separate meaning from its literal definition. Now, there are different kinds of figure of speech. It can be a metaphor, it can be a simile, it can be a hyperbole, and so on. Now, in this particular poem, we see the poet using different, means at least 5 different kinds of figure of speech. Now, in the first line of the poem, the poet here uses a simile where he wanders all alone as a cloud, okay, wandered lonely as a cloud. So, as a cloud, I wandered lonely as a cloud, here is a simile that floats on high over vales and hills, just as the cloud floats, okay, over the valleys and the hills. So also the poet William Wordsworth has been wondering how lonely as a cloud. Lonely, the word lonely means he didn't have any other companion with him. He was wandering over the valleys and the hills all alone, just like a cloud. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. When all at once means when all on a sudden, okay? When all at once I saw a crowd. Who saw a crowd? The poet, that is William Wordsworth, while taking a walk beside the lake, saw a crowd. Crowd here is a word that is used only for human being, okay, that is used only for human being. Crowd also means vast expanse, okay, a vast expanse. What did he see? He saw a host of golden daffodils, okay, he saw a host of golden daffodils. The word host here means a person who receives or entitled or entertains other people as a guest. Now, he saw a crowd or a host of golden daffodils beside the lakes. Suddenly, as he was taking a walk, he saw a crowd or a host of golden daffodils. Now, crowd, as we know, is used for human being. So here, crowd is also a crowd here is used is a personification. Now, personification is also a figure of speech. Okay, personification is also a figure of speech. Personification means giving human trait or characteristics to something that isn't human. When a lifeless object is given a characteristics to do something like that of human, it is known as a personification. Now, the word crowd has been used for the daffodils, but we know that daffodils is just a flower, it is not a human being. So, the poet here uses a personification, we can see the use of personification in this line. So when all at once I saw a crowd. Who saw the crowd? A crowd of what? The poet saw a crowd of golden daffodils. Now, golden daffodils. Golden, this is not the color of the daffodils. We know that the color of the daffodils is yellow. But the poet here probably used the word golden in order to mean that the daffodils were shining like gold. Now, besides the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, he saw the golden daffodils beneath the trees. Okay, beside the lakes, beneath the trees. What were the daffodils doing? They were fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Now, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Fluttering. What flutters? Flutters here means to flap its wings. Okay, light trembling motion. Now, who can flutter? It is the birds that can flutter. And dancing. Who can dance? Normally, it is the human being that dance. Okay, that can dance. So, again, we see the use of personification here in these particular line. So, what were the daffodils doing? The daffodils were fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Breeze here means gentle wind. Now, as the gentle wind was blowing, the daffodils were fluttering and dancing away in the breeze. So, I hope the first stanza is clear to you. Now, let me proceed to the second stanza. Continuous as the star that shine and twinkles on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Continuous as the stars that shines. Okay, now in the second stanza, the poet once again compares the daffodils to the stars that shines, okay, in an unending way. So, continuous means unending, as the stars. What is compared to the stars here? The daffodils is compared to the stars here. So, just as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, in the same way, these daffodils are continuous and seem to be blooming, okay, and seem to be happily blooming. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. These daffodils are stretched, okay, in never-ending line. Never-ending line means the line that is not ending, okay, that is not ending. So, never-ending line here also means that the scenic beauty of daffodils have a kind of everlasting impact or a long lasting impact in the mind of the poet. The memory of the daffodils which he saw beside the lake, okay, beside the lake, beneath the trees that were fluttering and dancing in the breeze, is totally captured in his mind. And this captured picture had a long-lasting impact in the mind of the poet. Now, these daffodils stretched in a never-ending line along the margin of the bay. Margin here means edge, okay, margin here means edge. And bay here is a water body, okay, it is a water body. So, 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. 10,000 saw I at a glance. Now, again in this particular line, we see the poet using a hyperbole. Hyperbole is also a figure of speech, where hyperbole is the use of exaggeration as a rhetoric device or a figure of speech, okay. In other words, we can say that it is a way of like speaking or writing that makes something that makes someone or something sounds bigger, okay, better, more, etc. than they actually are. So this is what a hyperbole means. Now, it is not that it is not like this that the poet had counted the number of daffodils that he had seen, but what he wants to say that he had seen a large number of daffodils. So he uses the word 10,000s, okay, 10,000 saw I at a glance, okay, 10,000 saw I at a glance. So when he took a brief or a hurried look, he felt as if he had seen at least 10,000 daffodils at a glance, okay, tossing their heads in the sprightly dance. Now, these daffodils were again tossing their heads. Now, it is not like this that the daffodils have heads, okay, because we know that the daffodils have are flowers, they don't have heads, but the whole flower itself is considered to be having head, okay, is considered to be having heads. So these daffodils were tossing their heads and they were in a sprightly dance. Sprightly dance, sprightly here means happy, okay, sprightly here means happy. They were happily dancing, okay, they were happily dancing. Who were happily dancing? The daffodils were happily dancing in the breeze, okay, in the breeze by tossing their heads. So in this particular stanza, we see the poet using both a hyperbole as well as a personification in order to express what he had, in order to express what he had seen and in order to express how the daffodils were dancing away happily. What happened? Huh? No connection. Okay. Any, this one, comment? Maybe the internet connection is. Okay, so I've completed explaining the second stanza. Now let me explain the third stanza. Let me read the third stanza first. After that, I'll be explaining the third stanza line by line. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. Okay. Now, the poet here says that as the wind, as the gentle breeze was blowing, the waves beside them danced. Now, them here refers to the daffodils. But they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. But they here again refers to daffodils or the yellow flower. outdid the sparkling waves. Outdid here means surpassed or excelled. Okay. So the daffodils, as we have seen in the first and the second stanza, were also dancing. When it comes to dance, okay, when it comes to dance, the daffodil seems to outdo, okay, seems to have excelled or surpassed the waves which was also dancing. The waves besides them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves. The sparkling waves here means the waves that was shining. In glee, the word glee here means great delight. Okay, so both the waves as well as the daffodils were dancing. But here the poet says that when it comes to dancing, the daffodils seems to have surpassed the waves which were dancing. The daffodil seems to be dancing beautifully and gracefully. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. Now, in such an atmosphere, in such a picturesque setting, the poet here says that he could not but be gay. He could not, okay? He could not but be gay. The word gay here means cheerful. He could not avoid being cheerful, okay? The daffodils seems to cheer up his low spirit. Now, in the first stanza, we have seen that the poet was lonely, okay? That the poet was lonely. But now, the poet seems to have found a jocund company, okay? A jocund company. And he seems to be very happy, okay, to see the waves as well as the daffodils dancing in glee. Okay, dancing in glee. I told you that the meaning of the word glee here means great delight. So the daffodils was dancing away in glee. A poet could not but be gay. A poet could not but be cheerful in such a jocund company. In such a jocund company. Jocund here means happy company. And in whose company? In the company of the daffodils. Okay. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. I gazed and gazed, but little thought. So what was the effect of that particular scene upon the poet? The poet was totally absorbed in the beauty of the daffodils. Okay, so he gazed and gazed. The word gazed means he looked and looked, but little thought. Okay, but little thought means but little did he realize what wealth the show to me had brought. What wealth? Wealth here means valuable possession. Actually, it is, but it also means abundance of happiness that the nature had given him. So the nature, that is daffodils, okay, that is daffodils had given him so much of joy and so much of happiness that he considered this to be wealth, okay, that he considered to be so this to be wealth because it is so precious and so valuable to him. Now, now the poet here considers to be considered this show to be a kind of wealth because he is in a joyful spirit, okay, because he is now very happy. So he considers it to be a kind of wealth. So what show the wealth to me, wealth the show to me had brought. I hope you have understood the third stanza. Now let me go on to the last stanza. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. For oft, the word oft here means often. When on my couch I lie, when the poet lie down on the couch. Couch means couch is not a bed, it is in fact a place to sit. It is more or less like a sofa. So for often when the poet sit all alone on the couch in vacant or in pensive mood. Vacant here means he's not busy, he's not engaged, in a lonely mood or in a pensive mood. The word pensive here means thoughtful or a sad mood. They flash upon that inward eye. They flash. What flashes? The daffodils, the beautiful scenery that he had seen, the wealth that nature had shown to him, the joy that the nature had given to him. Okay? That flash, they flash upon his inward eye. Inward here means the eye of the mind. Okay, the eye that the mind can see. Okay, the eye of the mind. So they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. The word bliss here means complete happiness, and the word solitude here means the state of being alone. So whenever the poet is lonely, or whenever he is in a vacant or pensive mood, whenever he remembers the beautiful scenery of the daffodils, whenever he recollects or recalls the joy that the nature had given him, the poet feels that this itself is a blessing. It is a bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure feels and dances with the daffodils. And then my heart with pleasure feels. Whenever he recalls the beautiful scenery of the daffodils, his heart is filled with pleasure. And along with the and then his heart dances with the daffodils whenever he recalls that beautiful scenery. So we see in this poem, Wordsworth's great attachment with nature. To him, nature is not just a beautiful scenery or something that is pleasant to look at, but nature has certain power. Nature itself is life-giving. So here it means, so the real theme, okay, the real theme of this poem is that nature has the power to uplift anyone's loneliness and give him joy and happiness. Okay. I hope you have understood the whole poem. Now, as for the questions and answers that will be your assignment from page number 109. You're going to do this as your assignment. Question number 2, A, B, C, and then question number 3, 4, 5. You're going to do all of this as your assignment. Thank you. That's all.